The door opens at midnight without keys turning. The figure that enters is small, hunched, with hands ending in fingers too long. When it speaks, the mother hears the words inside her skull. Time to pay. She promised her firstborn 1 year ago when this thing saved her from execution. Now it has come to collect what she traded for her life. You know this story as Rumpelstiltskin, the girl who spun straw into gold, the creature who demanded a terrible price, the name that broke everything. But every version you heard was sanitized, stripped of what it truly meant, buried so deep you never see what kind of creature capable of creating gold would want a human child, or why speaking its name caused it to scream and tear itself apart, or what it was really doing in that locked room for 3 nights while it waited for her to die. The seals are breaking. This is Pandora's project, where stories that were locked away, twisted, and erased are finally clawing into light. Subscribe to witness which tomb splits open next. Comment which buried truth demands exposure. This fairy tale is 4,000 years old. What it preserved will change everything you thought you understood about monsters, about bargains, about the price humanity once paid for knowledge that seemed divine. The creature spinning in darkness was never what they told you it was. Time to unearth what they buried. Part 1. The Grimm version. Everyone knows a version of this tale, but hidden in this strange little story are echoes of something far older than anyone imagined. Once there lived a poor miller who wanted to impress royalty, so he lied and claimed his daughter possessed the impossible ability to spin straw into gold. The king heard this story and felt greed awaken in his chest. He ordered the girl brought to his castle immediately and locked her inside a room filled wall to ceiling with straw. His command was simple: spin this into gold by morning or face execution at dawn. The girl sat in that cold stone chamber and wept because she had no idea how to spin straw into anything, much less transform it into precious metal. Then, just before midnight, the door opened without any sound, and a strange, small figure entered the room. It offered help in exchange for payment, first her necklace, then her ring. Each night the straw became gleaming gold, and each morning the king demanded more from impossibility made real. On the 3rd night, when she had nothing left to trade, the small figure made a different bargain. It said it would help her one final time if she promised her firstborn child. Trapped between execution and a future that seemed impossibly distant, she agreed. By morning, the straw had transformed into more gold than the kingdom had ever possessed. The king was so pleased he made her his queen within days. A year passed and she bore a beautiful daughter. She forgot completely about the bargain until one night the small figure returned without warning to claim what was promised. The queen begged and wept, offered wealth beyond measure, land, everything the kingdom contained. But the small figure refused every offer and said something living holds more value than all treasures combined. Yet perhaps moved by her desperate tears, it made one final offer. It told her if she could guess its name within 3 days, the child would remain hers. She tried every name she knew and sent messengers across the kingdom gathering more. But no matter what she guessed, the answer was always wrong. Until the 3rd day, when one messenger rode deep into the forest, beyond where normal people traveled, and discovered a fire burning in a clearing. A tiny figure danced around the flames, singing in strange rhythms. Tomorrow I brew, the day after I bake, then I fetch the queen's child awake. How good that no one knows my game, for Rumpelstiltskin is my name. When the small figure appeared that final midnight, the queen spoke the name with everything she had. Rumpelstiltskin. It froze. Its eyes went wide. It screamed words that sounded like agony. Who told you? Who told you? It stamped the floor so hard it sank into the earth itself, and in some tellings it tore itself in two. This is how the Brothers Grimm recorded the tale in 1812, but here begins the real secret. The Grimm brothers did not write fairy tales, but collected folklore, stories passed through generations by voice alone before anyone wrote them down. They preserved these tales before they disappeared completely from human memory. Jacob Grimm himself believed many stories were far older than people realized, ancient even, passed from a time before recorded history. And recent research suggests he was absolutely correct. In 2016, researchers from Durham University and the New University of Lisbon used techniques borrowed from evolutionary biology to test this theory. They treated folktales like living organisms, tracing how story patterns evolved and spread across cultures and centuries. What they discovered was remarkable. This tale falls under a category known as the name of the supernatural helper, and based on their analysis, it is estimated to be over 4,000 years old. But what does this actually mean, and why did this specific pattern repeat across so many different cultures, separated by vast distances and centuries of time? The answer will disturb you deeply. Part 2. The Bronze Age Secret. In folklore across every culture, spinning appears everywhere with profound significance. And the reason why reveals something terrifying about what this story truly preserves. For ancient peoples, spinning represented something far beyond simple housework, because it was cosmic work. In Greek mythology, the three Moirai sat at the edges of reality and spun the thread of every human life. From the moment of birth to the instant of death, everything was spun, measured and cut by these three sisters who controlled fate itself and held power over all mortal destiny. But the Greeks were not unique in this belief. In Norse mythology, the Norns sat at the roots of Yggdrasil, the great world tree, and spun the fates of both gods and mortals with equal disregard for rank or power. In ancient Vedic tradition from India, reality itself was described as an enormous golden tapestry woven from threads that connected all things across the cosmos. Thread was not merely a metaphor for life, but was life woven into physical form by divine hands. And gold specifically symbolized more than simple wealth, represented divinity, purity, even immortality in cultures around the world. So when someone spins straw into gold, they are not performing a magic trick for entertainment, but transforming the mundane into the divine, taking ordinary dried grass and changing its fundamental nature into something sacred. In later centuries, this idea evolved into what we call alchemy, the mystical art of transforming base matter into higher forms. We typically imagine alchemy through medieval images of bearded men trying to turn lead into gold inside smoky laboratories. But older than those images is the concept of alchemy as spiritual transformation, not just physical, a transformation of the soul, of fate, of reality's underlying structure. When examined through this perspective, Rumpelstiltskin is not just spinning threads, but performing cosmic work, altering the fabric of reality itself. Some researchers believe these stories are not pure fantasy, but echoes of times when such knowledge existed and was genuinely feared by those who witnessed it. But where did this knowledge originate, and why does it always demand such a terrible price in every version we find? The story category to which Rumpelstiltskin belongs is now dated back over 4,000 years to the beginning of the Bronze Age, a turning point in human development. For the first time, humans learned to take two ordinary metals, copper and tin, and fuse them through fire into something entirely new: bronze. Imagine yourself as a villager in that ancient time, living without any understanding of chemistry or metallurgy. One day, a stranger arrives covered in soot with eyes reflecting firelight. In his hands, he holds metal, a blade that cuts through stone, a tool that reshapes the world. To you, he is not merely a man, but something closer to a god. The ability to extract metal from stone and reshape it with fire was seen as supernatural. Those who possessed this knowledge, the metalworkers, were both revered and feared across cultures, viewed as keepers of secrets too powerful to be entirely human. And the strange part is that many ancient cultures never claimed to have discovered metalworking themselves, but said it was given to them by beings from elsewhere. The Book of Enoch, once considered sacred scripture by early Christians, tells of the Watchers, divine beings who descended from heaven and taught humanity forbidden arts, including the craft of metalworking. Even in the Bible, we find Tubal-Cain described as a forger of all tools of bronze and iron. Throughout the ancient world, this theme repeats with unsettling consistency. In Sumer, craftsmen built temples for gods and kings. Among the Hittites, metalworkers labored behind veils of steam and sacred fire. The Norse peoples told tales of dwarves who forged Thor's hammer Mjolnir deep beneath mountains. The Slavic peoples spoke of Svarog, god of fire and creation. These figures always shared certain characteristics. They were elusive, powerful, never fully human in nature. They lived in mountains or beneath the earth, spoke in foreign tongues, appeared mysteriously and disappeared just as mysteriously. Just like the small figure in Rumpelstiltskin who appears without warning and vanishes without explanation. But consider the question that should terrify you. What did Rumpelstiltskin actually want? Not gold which it created effortlessly, not a kingdom which it could have claimed, but a child. Why would a being capable of transforming reality itself demand an infant? And why does this same pattern appear in cultures separated by thousands of miles and centuries of time? Part 3. The Ultimate Price. Throughout ancient civilizations across the world, people sacrificed their firstborn children to beings they believed possessed divine and supernatural knowledge. This was not punishment or cruelty, but the highest form of trade with forces beyond human understanding. Archaeological evidence shows this practice existed across numerous cultures that had no contact with each other. In Carthage, archaeologists excavated a sacred site called the Tophet, where thousands of infant remains were discovered buried in ceremonial urns. Ancient Phoenician texts describe these children as offerings to Baal Hammon. This deity was believed to grant impossible favors in exchange for the most valuable sacrifice humans could provide. In ancient Israel, despite biblical prohibitions, evidence suggests some people continued practicing child sacrifice to Moloch during times of desperate crisis. The Bible itself references these practices multiple times, condemning them but acknowledging they occurred. In various Mesoamerican cultures, firstborn children were sometimes offered to gods who controlled rain, crops, and survival itself. Why specifically firstborn children? Because in ancient belief systems, the firstborn represented potential, the future, everything a family line could become. Sacrificing your firstborn meant giving up not just a child, but your entire future lineage. It was the ultimate demonstration that you valued divine intervention more than your own continuation. This was the price for knowledge that seemed to come from us, for miracles beyond human capability, for transformation of reality itself. And Rumpelstiltskin demands exactly this price, following patterns established in the Bronze Age dawn when humans first encountered beings who could perform impossible acts. The creature is not being cruel or arbitrary, but following rules burned into the story's structure 4,000 years ago when people genuinely believed divine help required the ultimate sacrifice. But here is what should freeze your blood. In every version across every culture, the being never explains why it wants the child. It simply demands payment according to ancient formulas no one questions, almost as if it has no choice in what it asks for, almost as if something else is controlling what price it must demand. And that realization changes everything about how we should understand this story. Part 4. The Prisoner's Freedom. In ancient traditions across the world, divine beings do not speak like humans, but sing and chant. Their words follow rhythms and patterns that human minds cannot fully comprehend. Which becomes interesting when you notice that in almost every version of Rumpelstiltskin, the creature's secret name is revealed the same way, through a song, a chant, a rhythmic poem spoken around fire. And this divine language was believed to possess enormous power in itself. Consider the book of Genesis. How does God create the world? Through speech. God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. No tools, no fire, no physical work, just words spoken into void. Speech itself becomes the instrument of creation. This pattern repeats across cultures. In ancient Egypt, the god Ptah creates the world not by shaping matter, but by speaking reality into existence. In these traditions, language is not merely communication, but a fundamental force that can reshape the universe. So what was Rumpelstiltskin truly? A demon? A trickster? A forgotten deity from ages past? Or perhaps something else entirely different from what we imagined? Perhaps it is a preserved memory of the first metalworkers, the firebringers, the keepers of secrets, beings who offered help for terrible prices. Its strange inhuman name, its power to spin gold, its demand for the firstborn child. These are not pure fantasy, but echoes of genuine beliefs from the ancient world. Beliefs about gods who worked in fire, beings who spoke in riddles, rituals and secret names that could bind supernatural forces to human will. But there is something else, something that occupies the darkest corners of thought. In the original ancient versions, Rumpelstiltskin is not defeated when the queen speaks its name, but liberated. Because speaking its true name does not mean its destruction, but its freedom. Consider this perspective carefully and think about what it means. What if the small figure was never the villain of the story, but the victim? In every culture where this tale is told, the being is trapped and bound by ancient contracts, curses, or spells. It is forced to serve endlessly, to spin endlessly, to help endlessly for a price it can never truly keep. And when someone speaks its true name, that act breaks the binding and frees the creature from eternal servitude. That is why it does not disappear in rage when the queen speaks the name, but disappears in relief, so overwhelming it sounds like agony to human ears. The small figure is not the demon of the story, but the prisoner. And the real demons are us. The humans who were willing to sacrifice anything, even innocent children, for divine power. The humans who bound supernatural beings to forced labor through magic we barely understood. The humans who created systems of such desperate inequality that people would trade their children just to survive another day. Stories evolve over time, becoming softer and kinder, but truth remains hidden in the patterns, in the ancient fears that refuse to die no matter how many centuries pass. And here is the most disturbing revelation. These beings, these spinners of gold and fate, never really disappeared but simply learned to hide. They still exist in the shadows between what we can see and what we refuse to acknowledge. Still bound by contracts established before writing existed to record them. Still spinning in darkness. Still waiting for someone desperate enough to call their names and summon them from wherever they exist between moments. Still hoping someone will speak their true names and break chains that have held them prisoner for 4,000 years. If you hear strange noises at night, rhythmic tapping, endless spinning, think of Rumpelstiltskin. Think of the prisoner who spun straw into gold for 4 millennia. And ask yourself what you would sacrifice for impossible help. What would you trade for divine power? Because the bargain is still being offered. You just have to know which name to call. But be warned, some names should never be spoken aloud and some contracts can never be broken. Final part. The breaking seals. The seals are breaking. The stories that were locked away are clawing back into light. What began as a simple fairy tale has revealed itself as something far darker, a 4,000-year-old memory of times when gods and humans still made bargains, when names possessed actual power, when the price for divine help was the most valuable thing we could offer. Rumpelstiltskin is not just a fairy tale, but a window into our oldest fears and our deepest hunger for power beyond our reach. It preserves evidence of the terrible costs our ancestors were willing to pay. The creature was freed when the queen spoke its true name. But how many others remain imprisoned today, spinning in locked rooms, bound to serve desperate humans forever, hoping someone will learn their names and set them free? Did this revelation change how you see fairy tales forever? Subscribe to Pandora's Project to witness which other tombs crack open next. Leave a like if discovering the prisoner behind the monster shattered everything you thought you knew. Comment which ancient lie needs exposing next. And if you have ever heard strange sounds at night or felt the heavy weight of bargains made in desperation, share your experience below. Some truths refuse to stay buried deep no matter how deep we try to hide them. This is Pandora's Project. The ancient seals are finally breaking. Every time you heard Rumpelstiltskin before tonight, you were hearing an echo of something much older. Tonight you heard the original scream. The creatures spinning in shadows were never the monsters. We were. We always were.